Hey, welcome. Good morning. Welcome. I am not really sure how many we're going to have join us, but we are going to wait a couple more minutes here. We have had several people purchase tickets today, and even if they're not able to hop on here, we still want to make sure that we get a good recording done so that we can have a link provided. And that will be a private link that I send to anyone who wants it on YouTube, and that will be of this presentation. So we are about to get started here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All righty, so everyone should be able to see the screen. If anyone is having trouble hearing me, please let me know. I won't know that unless you let me know in the chat. And we are going to get started in about 1 minute. Really happy to have everyone here. And let's see, open up the chat box. So if you have any questions, I do have the chat box open, but occasionally I don't see it. So you may have to send me a message, a text message or a message on Facebook Messenger as well, and I can check my phone. But we have about 1 minute before we're going to start the presentation, and I cannot wait to have everyone here. It's going to be awesome. And so, awesome. Good morning. Thank you. Welcome. Okay, it's 9:30 now, and let's see. Okay, we are about ready to get started. Okay, it is 9:30. I do want to wait just a minute or two longer because I do have at least a few more who showed interest and did say that they'd like to be here today. I don't want to rush that. Okay. So primarily what we're talking about today on today's webinar is going to be perfecting your pitch. And we're going to be talking about connecting to the personal emotional needs of others. And let me go ahead and include this. Okay, great. Welcome, Omar. Good to see you this morning. We're going to wait just a minute or two longer. I know we have a few more people who showed interest. If you have any questions this morning, make sure you reach out to me in the text box or the chat box. I believe if you tap your space bar on your computer, if you're on a PC, you will be able to actually speak and talk. So, and or send me a message and I can unmute your mic if you can't do that yourself. But you should be able to do that. You should be able to do that yourself. And Omar, we are waiting just a few minutes here just to make sure that anyone who wanted to join is able. And I am sharing my screen with everyone right now so that everyone gets a good idea of what it is that we're beginning with today. And so today's webinar is perfecting your pitch, connecting to personal emotional needs. And what that means is I am going to be helping you to identify the main components that are necessary anytime you talk about your product or your service to anyone else at any time. So whether this is your mom asking what you're doing now, whether this is your, I don't know, maybe this is your potential prospects and clients. This could be just somebody on an elevator. But you want to have a few key points and key elements in your pitch that you are able to just use no matter what. You can rely on these, and these are your buzzwords. These are things that help your audience immediately connect the problems that you solve to your product or your service. And that will make you much more powerful, and in the fact that you will all of a sudden become interesting. People will get curious immediately about what it is you do and want to hear more. So, okay, we've waited long enough now. So if anybody, the few that paid who aren't here, will get a link to the video once I have it uploaded. Okay. Uh-oh, somebody was asking me. Okay, there we go. Hey, Aaron, good morning. Good to see you, man. If you have any questions or anything, just include them in the chat box, man. Anybody that has anything going on, just make sure you let me know as far as like if you need me to slow down or repeat anything, go over anything a little bit better. I'm happy to do all of that. And remember, I can't always keep an eye on the chat box, so sometimes I'll be teaching and then I'll check it after I've finished a slide or when I get a break. But so everyone should at this point understand the purpose of today's webinar. If you have any questions about that, let me know, but we are going to go ahead and get rocking and rolling here. So let's go to slide 2. So this is setting a positive emotional state. This is something that I recommend you do before you go into a meeting. If you can get into a habit of doing this the minute that you wake up, this will set your energy, your emotional state, and it changes your posture, it changes your breathing patterns, it changes your demeanor. The first thing you want to do is set a positive emotional state. Now, the fastest way to do this is by recalling a time in your life or even imagining a moment where you're truly proud of yourself. So I want you to do that now. Before we get started, I want you to imagine or recall a time in your life when you were truly proud of yourself, when you really felt good about yourself. And notice the way that your posture begins to shift. Notice the way that your breathing begins to change, and really start to focus now. And as you begin to focus, I want you to connect to how this makes you feel, how it makes you stand, how it makes you think about yourself. And while you're doing that, I want you to think maybe this is in connection to achieving a goal or accomplishing something great. And I want you to think about how that felt, and no matter the intensity, if you were to take a scale and say a scale from 0 means I don't feel it at all, 10 means I feel it on a level that's just amazing and intense, I want you to try to crank it up, try to increase it. No matter where it's at right now, I want you to try to see if you can increase that intensity. And I highly recommend that you try to do this almost every single day. As soon as you wake up, before you go into a sales meeting, before you go into a networking meeting, before you take a test, before you go into any challenge from now on, set your positive emotional state right out of the gate. First thing you do, okay? So now that we've done that, we're going to move on to the 4 stages of the learning process. Some of this is review for some of you, but we're going to cover it really quickly because it's really important that nobody tries to master this concept today. You can have access to a private link where you can rewatch this webinar, but don't feel obligated to master this skill set today, and here's why, okay? The 4 stages of competence or the learning process. As you read over these 4 stages of the learning process, it is important to realize that every day we are all introduced to concepts that we have never heard of. And if you've never heard of it, if you've never seen it, you cannot have any cognitive ability to comprehend it, okay? Now, the first stage of the competence or the learning process is total ignorance, okay? We don't know what we don't know. We can't know what we don't know. The second stage is now we're aware of our ignorance concerning a subject, but we don't know it well. We've just discovered it. So we think we know a little bit about it, but there's still a lot of learning to be done. The third stage is where most people stop learning. They're entirely satisfied with knowing what something is and being able to comprehend it and be able to do it well enough while concentrating. So with great effort, we're acquiring and executing the skill at the third stage. And then the final stage is where our experts live. That's the mastery level. We can demonstrate what we know unconsciously, okay? So you've mastered the skill. What that means is that's where our negative and positive emotional states live too. So when you all of a sudden notice that you're really happy, you didn't have to learn how to do that. That's something that you've already mastered. You know how to feel happy. Just like sadness, we know how to feel sad. We don't have to relearn that process. It's an automatic. So our emotional states typically lie in that place of unconscious competence, and we've mastered them. Think about whenever you were learning to drive a car, right? Most of us, that was recent enough in our lives that we can remember that initially that was a very difficult task and it was kind of scary. You might have remembered having your hands at 10 and 2 o'clock and making sure that you were always checking your rear view mirror and your side mirrors and making sure that you turned your blinker on a half a block early before you made a turn. And all this stuff was things that when you first started learning how to drive, they seemed like, I'm never gonna get this. It's gonna take forever. And yet now, most of you could grab my keys, hop in my car, eat a donut, drink a cup of coffee on the way to work, and be talking on the phone in my vehicle, and you'd be fine. And that's because you now have pretty much mastered that. Now, I know we could all argue that we've seen a lot of people that think they've mastered driving who really haven't, but it's you know what I'm saying. That's the mastery level, but you didn't get there overnight is my point. So just take your time with this. Realize that if you've never heard any of this stuff before, then you're gonna be at the first level of unconscious incompetence. If you've heard of it before, but you're just now starting to practice it and implement it, you may already be kind of bored with it. You may be already at the conscious competence place, but not quite to the unconscious competence where it's just your nature to automatically connect with the emotions of others. So the reasons that we learn, why does this happen? Why do the 4 stages of the learning process actually occur? Well, if you can look at this diagram, you can see that there are 3 different circles on 2 different portions of the brain. Now, they've only marked the right hemisphere on the prefrontal cortex, and they've only marked the left hemisphere in the back where the hippocampus region is. But if you can imagine that actually makes a U shape. So I don't know if you guys can see my mouse, but right here in the front prefrontal cortex area, that's there, but it's also there. And the hippocampus actually is a U shape that extends all the way across this lower region. So these 3 circles, you've got the red circle on the right side and on the left side. You've got the green circle that kind of hides a little bit behind the yellow. And then finally you have the yellow circle, okay? Now, these are the parts of the brain that light up whenever you are performing an action. That's in the red. So when you're doing it, your amygdala lights up, and those are your emotional regions. That's in the front prefrontal cortex there. And then your hippocampus region lights up right there in the back, and that's for long-term memory, okay? Now, when you're witnessing the action, which means you're watching somebody else do something, when you're watching someone else do something, the green portion lights up. And then whenever you're hearing about something, the yellow portion lights up. So if you can imagine, humans are capable of learning whether they're performing the action themselves, whether they're watching the action, or whether they're hearing about the action. Our mirror neurons light up. And when those mirror neurons light up, it helps us with empathy, being able to feel what someone else is feeling. It helps us with skill building through mimicry, so we can actually watch somebody else do something and then try or attempt to do it, and our body kind of can go through the same motions just through having watched them. And then finally, vicarious experience. If someone begins telling us a story, we can actually feel the emotional state that that person was in. If the imagery is really good, then we can start to see ourselves there in that same place. And when we do, we feel that experience, okay? So that's how the learning process works. If you activate the amygdala, which is the front area, those are your emotional centers. And then that rear portion is the hippocampus. That's where your long-term memories are stored. So whenever you activate both simultaneously, there's a much faster learning process that occurs. So that's what we're going to try to do with this. And here is the diagram that shows you where the amygdala is. It's the little purple sacs there on both sides of the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And as I said, you can see that the hippocampus runs the complete gambit, the whole loop, and connects the amygdala on the left side to the amygdala on the right side. But it actually goes the full course of both hemispheres. So, okay. What is a pitch in business? Okay. A business pitch is a presentation by one or more people to an investor or group of investors. This can also be in an email form, a letter, or even in an impromptu conversation like on an elevator, which is why so often people call it an elevator pitch. A pitch in sales often refers to the method of how a product or service is presented. What is the purpose of defining these terms? Well, by establishing linguistic frames of reference, we can better assess whether a situation with a client, an acquaintance, or even our friends and family is the right fit for our pitch. And by pre-framing, we can ensure we bring the best version of ourselves to the conversation, okay? I don't know how many of you guys have ever heard me talk about pre-framing, but pre-framing is a great concept, and we will cover it in week 2 of the training. And so that way you're able to, it's sort of what we did with creating that positive emotional state before we began. It's kind of the same mentality. You're utilizing a pre-framing method. It's just a little template, and you're establishing the character traits which matter most to you and connecting with what that would look like, what it would sound like, and what it would feel like if every person you communicated with felt that, if they saw you acting that way, if they heard you, and what that would do for your life if you could ensure proactively that you're always bringing the best version of yourself to the table. And that's really what that's about, okay? So if you have any problems whatsoever understanding that concept or need a little bit of help with that, go ahead and reach out to me. I'm happy to discuss that a little bit further. Okay, so keys to success. We are going to have 3 different steps that we are going to make sure that we use when we're creating our pitch. It doesn't matter what product or service you're providing, you want to have these 3 components as key elements in every pitch, okay? So step 1, we're going to use buffering statements, and the purpose of this is to gain and build trust. I'll explain that a little more as we get into it. Step 2 is going to be appealing to emotions. That's the way that we make ourselves be remembered. Remember, we talked about the amygdala just a second ago and how that is the place in the brain where you activate your emotions. And so that's how you're remembered, okay? Once you get into people's emotions, you are easily remembered, whether it's because they really like you and you have a good energy, or if they really dislike you. If they really dislike you, then that's a problem, but they're going to remember you. So that's the 2 sides of the coin. You want to be remembered for good things, not for bad things, but you do want to appeal to emotions. And it's okay to activate negative emotions as long as you don't leave people there. If you get them connected with the reason why they want to change or why they want to adopt a program or buy your product or service, it may be because they're wanting to leave a negative emotional state, and your product or service solves that for them and helps them see themselves on the other side in a positive place, okay? Step 3, you're going to book more prospects by being specific. So we are going to learn how to be specific about our action steps and what we want others to do and not feel badly about those action steps. It's really important that we have to be confident in our ability to communicate what people need to do, okay? If they don't know what to do and you haven't communicated that and articulated it clearly, you can just assume that they won't do it. They won't get it, and they will not do any action steps. Even if they believe that your product or service is the right solution, if they don't know what to do with that and don't know how to buy it or how to proceed, they won't, okay? All right, step one. We're going to talk about using buffering statements. Now, some of you may or may not know what a buffering statement is, but buffering in general means to make it softer, okay? Whenever you're buffering something, that's kind of the idea, is that you're downplaying it. You're making it less intense, okay? So buffering statements are used most often when delivering bad news, okay? But buffering means to soften or mitigate an upcoming idea, statement, or delivery that needs to be communicated. Using buffering statements makes it easy to be over the top in your delivery because you've already mitigated the coming information by downplaying the intensity and by also sparking curiosity. See, nobody likes an overzealous salesperson. They take it immediately as commission breath. It pushes people away. They think, wow, this guy is really, really wanting this sale. But if you downplay it a bit and you allow people the opportunity, if you give people permission to say no or to not be interested in your product, that's not something that people are typically used to. They're used to the serious nature, okay? They're used to the serious salesman who is intense and wants you to know that everybody needs this product. You can't go without it. You have to have it. And that is just something that turns people off. Whether it's true or not, they immediately become skeptical of whatever it is you're selling or providing, because to them, there's no product or service that everybody needs. And to them, it seems like you're trying to get the sell. I don't know another way to put that so that you'll understand the psychology behind it. This is playing on psychology, okay? But by adopting and applying some of the following statements to your pitch, you're playing on human psychology, and you can watch how rapidly you spark curiosity and gain trust in you and your product. But do use them sparingly and try not to be too self-deprecating. I don't know if you know what self-deprecating means, but don't totally crap on yourself the whole time. This is just a soft buffering. It's just giving people the slight permission to say no or to not be interested in your product, okay? So here are some of the ones that I use, and I'm going to give you a few seconds after I read these to try to see if you can come up with some that are natural for you and some that you would like to use. So one of the things that I'll say is some people don't need my product. However, most of the people I speak to, and you can see what I did there, is I said some people don't need my product. However, most of the people I speak to. So I'm giving them permission to not be interested in my product or purchase it. But then I'm letting them know that if you are like most people, and people typically like to be like most people. So most of the people I speak to don't have that opinion, okay? So then the next one, this may bore some of you, and that's quite all right. But, okay, some of you, one of the ones that Ed McIntyre, that's in my Monday Bold Networking group, says is, I'm sure nobody here will be interested in whatever his product is. However, if you're the kind of person that wants to blah, 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 okay? Finally, nobody here is dissatisfied with their current product, I'm sure. Okay? Now, I want you to try to think if you can come up with one or two buffering statements that would feel natural for you to use as an introduction for your product, that would initially give people permission to say no if they're not interested, or give people permission to not be interested in general. And then a hook that will allow them to see how they might also be interested, okay? So take a second or two and kind of think about how you might make that really natural and organic for yourself. Okay, great. Let's move on to step 2, appealing to emotions. This is the way to be remembered, okay? To connect your audience to the painful problems that you solve, don't focus on learning the ins and outs of how your products or services work. I mean, you should know that. But if you're good at what you do, nobody cares how you do it as much as what problem it solves for them. Okay? I'm going to repeat that. It's really, really important for everyone to get that. If you're good at what you do, or your product is great at what it does, nobody cares how it does it or how you do what you do as much as they care about the problem it solves for them. They're more interested in their problem being solved than they are in how awesome your product is. Okay? So instead of wowing everyone with your industry knowledge, which is actually putting everyone to sleep, believe me, nobody cares about our products and services as much as we do. That's why we're in the industry. That's why we love it. So it's putting them to sleep. So instead of doing that, learn how to use vivid imagery, analogies, and metaphors to help others connect personally to your product or service. When you bring in emotions and language to activate the emotional parts of your audience brains, that helps you, okay? That helps you to bridge that gap between all the jargon and all the industry words, okay? Now, the next slide I'm going to show you was a government study conducted that was a self-reporting on different emotions and the way that people felt the heat and or cold throughout their bodies. So this will be a universal chart. So here you go. Emotions coordinate our behavior and our physiological states during survival salient events and pleasurable interactions. Even though we are often consciously aware of our current emotional state, such as anger or joy, the mechanisms which give rise to these subjective sensations are still unresolved, okay? So here, there is a topographical self-report tool that revealed that different emotional states are associated with topographical, distinct, and culturally universal bodily sensations. So this is a diagram of a lot of different people, and if you want to write down that website, this was a government study, and you can actually go and look at the full study. And these were all genders, ages, didn't really matter, races, and even culturally, different countries and different things of that nature. So this was a self-reporting tool. Whenever people felt these emotions, they described them in detail, and this was the chart that people ended up, the scientists, the researchers ended up being able to produce this universal chart, which indicates what most people feel and describe feeling. And so you're looking at how universal our emotions are. When you start to talk about fear, anger, disgust, happiness, sadness, surprise, anxiety, love, depression, contempt, pride, shame, envy, when you begin to hit on these emotions, people actually feel it, okay? Because they were self-reporting this, so they had to actually get into that emotional state before they could self-report what feeling was happening in their body. So that'll give you a good idea of why you should connect to emotions. It's very, very important to make sure that you're able to do this well, okay? So here's the ways we do that. We appeal through emotions through our senses, okay? We have 5 senses, but we primarily focus on a few. You know, you got your smells, your sounds, your sights, your tastes, but some of these will help you to identify with the imagery, the emotions that this will make you feel. So has anyone ever felt stuck in a rut or been fed up with something, felt like you're caught in a bind? Has anyone here ever felt like a fish out of water, a sitting duck? You ever felt like you were having to climb out of a hole or climbing out of a rut? Have you ever felt like you're soaring above your problems or winning in general? What emotional state does that automatically elicit when you think of winning? How about being frustrated, sick and tired, panicked, anxious? All of these immediately help us connect with some sort of imagery or some sort of emotion. So I want you to start to think about ways that you can include this imagery into the types of problems you solve. So maybe your product helps people who are feeling stuck in a rut be soaring above those problems and winning. Okay? So whatever it is that your product does, make sure you connect with the problems it solves on an emotional level. Okay? And then start to create the outcome that your clients and or prospects would be most interested in experiencing. So remember, we're talking about the 3 components that should be in every pitch regardless of the industry. Okay? Whoops, went one too far. Step 3, be specific so that you will book more prospects, clients, whatever it is, sell more stuff. Be specific. People need to be told what to do with your information. First, simplify and articulate what you do in 1 sentence. That's really difficult for a lot of people to do, but it's important. Take some time and simplify and articulate what you do in 1 sentence, okay? As a business and life coach, I can in no way explain how I can get such phenomenal results in such little time. All right? I can't even tell you what I do in 1 sentence easily, but I had to simplify it and articulate it because people don't really want to know how I do what I do on a large scale. I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. That's it. That was as simply as I could articulate it. That's what I do. I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. That seems both specific and vague, and that's intentional. So practice with your own profession. You want people to be able to get an image immediately in their head of what it is that you do. Okay? Really get that in your mind. Really focus now. What is it that you do? What problems do you solve? And it's okay to be both specific and vague. I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. Now, some people are going to know right away what that means to them, and other people are going to go, what do you mean by that? Like, how do you do that? That's great. I want that. I want people to be interested in asking questions. So, be specific about what problems your product or service solves. My service rapidly connects people to the best version of themselves. Our products rescue those who are sick of whatever it is. Our company, solves that problem by simplifying the process. Whatever it is that you do, I help fix problems like blank by stepping in and blank. We reduce that stress by creating a specific plan, whatever it is, okay? This isn't super difficult, but it is important that you get very specific about having a 1 sentence, what do I do? What problems do I solve? Okay? Connecting people to the best version of themselves, which indicates that's a presupposition that a lot of people are walking around not connected to the best version of themselves. Okay? So I was able to include that. Okay. Let's move on into the next one. Okay. Be specific concerning services and products. People want to know what to expect, but not how you do it or what you know that they don't. Nobody likes to know it all, but everyone loves someone who can solve their problem. Okay? Somebody went unmute. Okay. Here we go. So, here's some of the things that I do. These are my specific services. Corporate workshops. Public speaking, okay? One-on-one life coaching. Maybe your business is cleaning, organizing. Maybe your products are all virtual. They're all online. Maybe they're all in person. I have to do this thing in person. I have to be there. Maybe it's driving. Maybe it's restoring something. Maybe your process is hands-on. Maybe it's hands-off. It's all remote. Whatever it is, be specific concerning what people can expect from your product or service. Know how to say what it is that you do in a way that's easy for people to understand, okay? So step 3 actually has 2 aspects. First of all, it's being specific concerning your services and your products, okay? Knowing exactly what you offer. And then secondly, the next step is to be more specific about action steps, okay? People won't come up with their own plan for what to do with your presentation if you don't tell them what you need them to do. People aren't mind readers, even though I pretend to be one from time to time and am able to do some things that appear psychic. I promise it's just a skill set, and I'm not really psychic and I'm not really a mind reader, okay? So you have to be specific. Once you get to the end, you can say, let's grab a cup of coffee and sit down for a chat. That's it. That's all you have to do. Or connect with me via email, or connect me via email with the heads of HR departments. So after the end of my pitch, I've got a specific, what do you need? I need you to connect me via email with the heads of HR departments. Call me and let's set up a free consult. You know what? If that sounds interesting to you, send me your current rates and let me run some numbers. Another action step that I've used in the past, if you'll do me a favor and send a group text with an introduction, I'll take care of the rest. Rotary clubs, chamber events, or even nonprofit groups are often looking for speakers. Maybe you know someone that fits into that category. That'd be a great introduction for me. Send me a social media message. Hit me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, anything like that. Shoot me an email with blank in the subject line. It's very specific. If you're interested in this, send me an email at to james@jamespesch.com and include blank in the subject line. If you know someone considering buying, include me in a chat, email or text. Or it may be as simple as, look, if this interests you, I'm going to give you a free gift. Just go to my site and subscribe to the newsletter. The most important thing, you're going to have your own action steps, okay? You're going to have something that you need people to do that I didn't cover here that will help your business grow. But if you do not tell people in your Facebook posts, in your emails, in your live videos, I remember whenever I was first trying to grow my YouTube channel, there was a significant difference between when I would ask people to like, subscribe, and comment, and when I didn't. And it was just people don't know what to do unless you tell them to do it. It may be common sense that it's really, really great for people to leave me a review after you get done using my services. That helps me out significantly. If you go and review me on Google or on Facebook, that's common sense. We all know that. However, unless you tell me you need it, we all have a lot going on every day. So they're not going to know which specific action steps to take in order to make sure that they're doing everything that they need to do in order to take advantage of your services. Does that make sense to everyone? If you have something that's a specific, if you want to talk about the last slide and ways that you can get what you do down to one sentence, I'm happy to talk about that. Or if your services, if you want to talk about that. And finally, the action steps, because this last step 3, booking more prospects by being specific, actually had more components to it than the other 2 steps. But I'm going to give a few seconds here, and if anybody has any questions, go ahead and drop those in the chat box. If not, we're going to recap all 3 steps really quickly in just a few minutes. Okay. Emotional anchors, better to use positive or sob stories or both? Great question, Aaron. Okay, so Aaron asked about one of the slides earlier on about emotional anchors. If you've not taken a neuro-linguistic programming course, you may not necessarily know what that means, anchors. So what he's talking about is establishing an emotional anchor in conjunction with either your product or service or with a current situation that somebody's going through. So what you do is you anchor that feeling to something, and then you anchor your product or service to the emotional feeling of getting out of that state. Okay, so that's an excellent question, Aaron. Focus really on the sob stories or the negative emotions being the state before you introduce your product or service. So you're emotionally anchoring everyone to a certain state of existence. So that, you know, people can really relate to being frustrated, being sick and tired, being stuck in a rut, okay? Now, those are all really vague and ambiguous, but they're all emotional states or imagery that people can relate to. Oftentimes it's really good if you have a testimonial of when somebody came to you, what they were experiencing initially, and then the feeling of winning and soaring above their problems at the end after they had worked with you. So both is probably the best answer, but making sure that you leave people in a positive emotional state in conjunction with your product or service and never connected to a negative emotional state. So you don't want to leave them there. Don't leave them in the negative state. You always want to shift them to the positive emotional state on the other side and connect your product or service with that, okay? And if they can relate to that problem and that feeling and that emotional state and can relate to wanting to be on the other side, they're going to automatically be interested in knowing more about your product. So I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know. Actually, let me unmute you for just a second. Hey, Aaron.
Yeah, what's up?
Did that answer your question?
Hell yeah, that was awesome.
Okay, great. If you have any more questions, let me know. But yes, that was an excellent question. Really helps facilitate the conversation too. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to mute you again, and then we're going to wrap up here.
Cool.
Okay, so excellent question from Aaron. Really, really glad to have the participation. That's great. We are now toward the end of the webinar. I try to keep these really short. They are content rich and really dense in information. So it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose. Make sure you take little sips or else it'll blast your face off, okay? So just little bits at a time. And remember, the most important components of these, okay? We're going to recap this and go through these again. Step 1, use buffering statements to gain and build trust. This is a psychological move where you are giving the other person permission to not be interested in your product or service whatsoever. It's totally cool if this isn't for you. No big deal, okay? Step 1, use buffering statements because that will help people trust you. It allows them to be able to open up to your message, okay? So step 1, buffering statements. Step 2, appeal to emotions. That way you're able to be remembered, okay? Appeal to the emotional problems that you solve. Focus a lot on how to communicate what your service, what your product does in a way, how it's a solution-based product, and what specific emotional problems this solves. Why are you relevant to them, to their problems, to their emotional needs? Appeal to their emotions and you'll be remembered more often, okay? We do that through using imagery and metaphors. Being anxious, being frustrated, being stuck in a rut, being sick and tired, climbing out of a hole, caught in a bind, feeling like a sitting duck. Regardless of what the imagery or what the metaphor is, this will help you appeal to the senses, and will help you to be remembered. Okay? Finally, be specific. First of all, what do you do in one sentence? Here's what I do. I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. Now, everyone on this webinar knows that I use neuro-linguistic programming, hypnosis, that I study psychology, and all sorts of things in order to make sure body language, mirroring and matching, human behavior. I study Stoic philosophy. There are a million different things that go into me being able to do what I do, but I simplify that into one sentence. I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. Okay? So I'm very specific about that. What do? I rapidly connect people to the best version of themselves. Okay? How do you do that? Well, I have specific products and services. First of all, I do corporate workshops. I also do public speaking. I do one-on-one life coaching. I do webinars. Okay? I have specific products and services that I use to do that, but that's what I do. Also, action steps. So I've given you the first two. Specifically, what do you do? And then step two, how do you do it? Okay? Step one, rapidly connect people with the best version of themselves. Step two, webinars, workshops, life coaching, public speaking. Okay? Step three, so how do I hire you? How do I get in touch with you? What do I do to get this? You have to be specific. Action steps. Hey, if you're interested, let's grab a cup of coffee. Call me and let's set up a free consult. Send me this in the email headline. Okay? You want to be specific about the action steps. How do I get your product? How do I get your service? Know what to do. Know the action steps to give them, and be specific every single time. Your audience will not get sick of it. They will absolutely begin to do what you tell them to do. You have to be consistent. So make sure that if you're doing live videos on Facebook or on social media, do your best to always ask for people to like it or love it, click subscribe, comment, share with a friend. All of those things are necessary for the algorithms to help you promote your business, so you need to ask for them. Ask for specific things. If you're going to do a sales presentation, at the end, be specific about the action steps you want them to take in order to fulfill those obligations, to fulfill those orders. So the most important part is to be specific about action steps. Let people know what they need to do to help build your business or to hire you. You have to be clear, okay? So those are the 3 different steps in order to perfect your pitch. Is there any questions before we wrap it up? All right, guys. If nobody has anything to add or any questions, then I guess we're going to wrap this thing up. Give a few more seconds here in case anybody wants to say anything. Okay. All right, guys. Hey, thank you so much for being here today. If you have any questions about this webinar, or if you want a link to the video after I get it uploaded to YouTube, just send me a message, email, Facebook message, text message, any of those work. And as soon as I get it uploaded, I will make sure that you have a link of your own so that you can go back through this content and make sure that you have it squared away really well. If you're in the live coaching class this afternoon at 4:30 p.m., I will see you on time. We will be starting right at 4:30 because I have a debate in Claremore that I have to get to that begins at 6 p.m. At Rogers State University. So love to see you there and look forward to it. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful day, and thank you for being here for the webinar on perfecting your pitch. We'll see you soon.